Blimey, this zombie show's a bit gay, isn't it? So, HBO just got done airing their adaptation of The Last of Us, and I have some thoughts about the queer themes presented in it because, I mean, of course I do, just look at me. Specifically, I'm very interested in discussing how they sometimes emphasised and sometimes completely changed aspects of the story they were adapting in order to explore specific themes and metaphors related to queerness that I don't think were there as strongly in the game. Which, if you're interested in playing, you can now buy the remake of for 60 quid. Are you taking the piss? But a lot of that was left more to implication. If you didn't stop and look around for it, you could miss it. It wasn't until the DLC campaign Left Behind, released a year later, and then The Last of Us Part 2, released 7 years later, where these aspects of the story became a lot more pronounced. So I want to take a look at how these changes in the show affect Ellie's thematic journey, specifically how her trials and tribulations through the apocalypse can be read as an extended metaphor for a young queer person slowly learning to accept their sexuality. We're going to look at the 3 episodes which I think support this interpretation the strongest, and then I'll wrap it all up in the end in a nice little conclusion bow, just like I'm a real video essayist or something. So let's go get some gay.
2 bros chilling in the hot tub, 5 feet apart cause they're not gay.
But Owen, I hear you shriek outside my window in the cold, cold night. Ellie is barely in this episode. Your entire argument has already fallen apart. And you'd be right. Farewell, my friend. No, yeah, okay. Ellie's actual screen time in this episode is minimal, but it still serves as a parallel to an all too common experience for young queer people. A lack of mentorship. Kids growing up believing that gay people can never be happy because they have no connection to those who have come before them. Think about it. Bill in this episode obviously acts as a moral lesson for Joel, just like in the game, but it's inverted here. In the game, he is miserable and alone because of his choices. He is a walking, talking cautionary tale to ensure Joel doesn't make those same mistakes by keeping Ellie at arm's length. In the show, he was also alone, even before the outbreak because he was gay in 2003, truly a fate worse than death. But he allowed Frank to break down his walls. Sorry. And in turn allowed himself to be loved. He believed that he was destined to live a closed-off, lonely life because of his sexuality, but he was proved wrong. And the tragedy is that Ellie reaches their house too late to find that out directly from Bill and Frank. She only sees their letter to Joel. She only gets some abstract ideal of what queer love can look like, but with a certain disconnect since she never knew either of them personally like Joel did. Yeah, and I know I somehow always manage to bring AIDS metaphors into these queer analysis videos, but come on! 2 elderly gay men's lives ended prematurely by a terminal illness which then deprives a younger gay person of mentorship that they could have really used. What's gayer than that? The gay sex and gay marriage depicted earlier in the episode probably, but... So yeah, the focus here is obviously on the 2 characters who take up the majority of the runtime, and after that, most of the thematic focus shifts over to Joel. But there is applicability to Ellie here, the sad sense that she has just barely missed out on something potentially life-changing, as opposed to the video game where she tells Bill to eat shit and die for a couple of hours.
Take all my food too while you're at it.
By the looks of it, you could lose some of that food.
Listen to me, you little shit.
No, fuck you! You handcuffed!
Women.
So episodes 4, 5 and 6 all deal with more general themes of found family that are common in queer works, but things really ramp up again on the old rainbow scale with episode 7, Left Behind. This is the one where we find out Ellie's gay origin story, focusing on her and her close good friend Riley running around an abandoned shopping mall together. Owen, I hear you shriek again, which you should really take it easy on that cannot be good for your throat. Surely this can't be taken as a metaphor, it's just straight up showing a queer relationship. They literally kiss on screen. And you'd be right, my friend, but you're forgetting one simple thing. I am so annoying. Firstly, we find out that Ellie attended a very strict all-girls boarding school when she was living in the Boston quarantine zone, one where she is told, conform to our society's very strict assigned role for you or step outside of that norm and literally end up down in the sewers for the rest of your life. Emphasis is immediately placed on Riley representing that rebellion against ordered society, through her joining the Fireflies, a group committed to liberating the people of the quarantine zone from its oppressive leadership, and through encouraging Ellie to embrace her own rebelling against established social norms, especially when it comes to her sexuality. Secondly, something that I've seen expressed by many queer people, both about the original DLC and the TV episode, is how accurately it captures the experience of queer adolescence. That weird in-between time where you're not quite sure what you're feeling, often culminating in a full-on gay crush, commonly on a close friend. This obviously isn't a metaphor because metaphors are not just when the exact thing I'm talking about happens exactly, and you can trust me on that because I wasted thousands of pounds on a creative writing degree. The degree says first, my bank account says a minus, and then a few more numbers after that.
Kill yourself.
No, my friends, the metaphor comes in when an infected attacks Riley and Ellie, biting them both and supposedly giving them the dreaded mushroom lurgy that's been going around lately. Because this is still a part of many queer people's first queer experience. That queer experience going wrong somehow and someone getting hurt. This can lead to younger queer people, especially someone again completely unexposed to positive queer experiences like Ellie, believing that this is the entire picture of the queer experience, that you should never express yourself to someone else in that way because it will always end up ending badly. Riley was Ellie's first love and also, as she puts it in the series finale, the first to die. That works as both a literal expression of survivor's guilt and a metaphorical allusion to that wish of being able to go back and do things a little differently now that you have more knowledge of who you are, which in this case is a relatable experience for most people regardless of sexuality. Her implicitly expressing that to Joel is her peeling away the final layer of the wall she has put up to protect herself. It reads to me as her revealing her biggest secret and, in a way, coming out to him. Even if she's only being completely vulnerable with him now as part of trying to force herself to believe that the one parental figure she has didn't just go sicko mode in a hospital. Also, this is a little bit of a tangent and also entirely vibes based, but Joel often comes across as like an awkwardly supportive ally dad trying to understand his lesbian daughter. Again, I don't have any real evidence for this one. My academic reasoning is basically just I'm right, and then I point at the screen until you either agree or leave my home. So, we've got Bill and Frank as a metaphor for Ellie's lack of queer mentorship, Riley as a metaphor for a bad first queer experience, both of them colouring how Ellie views queerness and herself as a queer person. But what about the present day? How do the experiences she's had in the past affect her decisions as she encounters new threats? Why is a gay woman facing off against a Christian pastor at a remote camp where the children are beaten and Jesus is a friend of mine. In episode 8, we are introduced to David, a former maths teacher turned Christian preacher and the leader of a group of people holed up in an abandoned resort trying to make it through a harsh winter. And already we have another big change in adaption here. Because in the game, David is just a polite but weird cannibal who seems a little bit too interested in Ellie. When adapting him to the show, the writers chose to change two major things about him. One, making him a Christian preacher, specifically with a cool youth pastor vibe, and two, making his interest in Ellie more pronounced. Suppose that's just one change when you think about it, really. This change gives David a little more depth than he has in the game, which isn't an insult to the original's writing. It's just that, in the game, we only see events from Ellie's perspective, so David and his friends don't need much more development than nutjobs who live by the sea and eat people. But in this episode, as with most of the other episodes, we've got scenes where neither Joel nor Ellie are around, and these provide a good opportunity to flesh out David's motivations and unique vibe as an antagonist. Like all hypocrites who hide behind religious texts, he preaches a gospel of peace and understanding but turns violent when someone steps out of line, in this case a young girl. The facade of a put-upon man just trying to do what's right, even being so merciful as to let Ellie go rather than let his friend Troy Baker shoot her, quickly dissolves away and reveals a patriarchal controlling fanatic who uses his religion to try and fix women he considers lost and, as is revealed later, sexually abuse them. You can certainly draw the conclusion that he was doing this sort of thing as a school teacher pre-apocalypse as well. So we have a Christian pastor in charge of a remote camp where he can dominate over everyone, abuse children until they fall in line, and he is trying to lure Ellie, a gay minor there, with a fake promise of religiously tinged acceptance? Probably means nothing. What's Joel up to? What? As I said earlier, Ellie has had her first queer experience, she's then heard vaguely that she may not be the first person ever to have that kind of experience, and now she's essentially experiencing baby's first hate crime. Beforehand, the dangerous non-infected people that Ellie and Joel have encountered have either been just trying to rob or kill them, standard apocalypse fare. But David is the first person Ellie encounters who wants to cause her harm because of who she is, who takes a special interest in her to the point where he tries to first of all groom her, then when she rejects that tries to mutilate her, and finally attempts to rape her. Remember that sexual assaults committed by people who work at conversion camps are very common, and there is a certain strain of particularly sick individual who believes that queer women can be cured of their illness through being raped by a man. This nearly happening to Ellie while hot flames burn around her is pretty much as direct a parallel as you can get to this. And her rejecting this attempt at conversion by, engaging David in the marketplace of ideas is her taking a big step on her queer journey. The step of learning not just to accept yourself, but also to reject people like David who try to tell young people that they're just confused or that they're being manipulated by whoever they're currently relying on for emotional support. David keeps talking about how lonely Ellie must be with Joel and how much more of a community she would have if she stayed with him, which is, again, a total lie. It is awful that Ellie had to do it in such a violent way, but she finally asserts herself to the world in this episode as definitively gay. Not going through a phase, not someone who did something silly when she was younger. Gay. Here and now. She might as well have caved this dude's skull in with a pride flag, and you know what? She'd be right to. To say that The Last of Us is a gay story is for most people a pretty uncontroversial statement. After all, it explicitly depicts gay characters in gay relationships. But I hope that this video has made you consider how it's even gayer than one might consider at first, how it tells a very queer coming of age story without really billing itself as that. As much as I love watching things in that vein like Heartstopper, it's very encouraging to see this sort of story explored in the sort of TV show where you might not expect to find it. Those of you who have played The Last of Us Part 2 know how much queerer the source material for that one is right from the start, and while Neil Druckmann has already said that they're going to be making big changes to it, I hope that they keep the LGBTQ+ elements intact and find ways to expand on them as they did for Season 1. It means we get to see a whole new generation of fans meeting new characters, experiencing more queer representation, and having the exact same discussions online that everyone else was having when The Last of Us Part 2 first came out. So anyway, here's why I think they should cancel The Last of Us Season 2 immediately. This video was made possible by all of my patrons. Thank you so much for your support. And an extra special thank you to Sam by Night, Flames of James, Fifi M and DJB13 for subscribing at my highest tier. If you want to click the link in the description and become a patron yourself, your support would mean the world to me. Thanks for watching and see you next time.